Happy Mac! Yay! The year is 1997, and Apple is in big trouble. Through the 1990s, Apple had been steadily losing market share in the PC industry. They were weeks away from bankruptcy. To try and revive their position, Apple bought Next, the company founded by Steve Jobs, and brought Jobs back in to set the company back on track. This and an investment of $150 million from Microsoft gave Apple some breathing room. Jobs realized macOS needed an overhaul and used the mock kernel-based Next Step to build OS X, which was fully released in 2001. This Powerbook G3, referred to as PDQ, pretty darn quick, is from this transitional period when Apple was restructuring around OS X and was striving to regain its position in the market. A friend of mine reached out and said he had one of these old G3 laptops and asked if I was interested in it. It came pretty filthy, so I decided to give a quick scrub down to make sure that all the gunk was off of it. For the most part, it was in decent condition, but it was just plain dirty. Once I had it cleaned up, I was able to kind of take a closer look at it. The first thing I had to note was this thing weighs a ton. This thing could be used as a projectile weapon. I can't imagine hauling these things around doing business, but certainly in the 90s, this is what we did. This is how we had mobile computing. But this thing was just chunky. Exciting on the bottom. Here's our specifications tag. Macintosh Powerbook G3 series 14.1 TFT 266 megahertz 1 meg / 64 meg / 4 gig. So that's 1 meg of cache, 64 meg of memory, 4 gig of disk space, 4 meg of video, and a CD and a modem. That's the configuration. Okay. Lots of copyright information. Do we have a year of manufacture? We do. It's right there. Kind of hard to see, but it says copyright 1998. So this machine is 27 years old, something like that. And the model number is an M4753. Fantastic. Let's take a tour of the outside of this machine. It's a little bit dusty and has obviously had something of a rough life, but there is something kind of interesting. You notice that the logo on the lid here is rotated. On the original Macs, or actually on the current Macs, the logo is the other way around, so that when you open up the cover of the laptop, it shows correctly. On this older MacBook, that's not the case. The logo will show up upside down. On this side, we have the battery, obviously with a little status button you can push to get a battery value. Obviously, the battery on this thing is completely shot, so no love there. I really got curious about this battery, so I decided to open it up and see if I could find out what's going on with it. The battery is removed with this little side lever that basically jettisons the battery out the side. So you have to kind of wiggle it around a bit and a little lever pops up and the battery comes out, or supposed to come out. Once you pop the lever out and give it a little tug, the battery slides out the side and you can just remove it. Something of a difference from modern laptops. The batteries are meant to be replaced and moved around so you can carry spare batteries with you. Interestingly enough, this battery is actually a lithium-ion battery. So this is obviously in the next generation. Earlier machines were actually using NiCads, but this one is lithium-ion and is obviously completely dead. Continuing the outside tour, on the side here we have an RJ11 port. That's a modem port, so you could plug your landline telephone connector into that, which is pretty cool. Next to that, we've got PCMCIA sockets, basically card slots for expansion boards that you can put in. On this end, we've got a CD-ROM drive. Guarantee this is CD-ROM, not DVD-ROM. and some open vents. This thing runs hot when it's running, so it really needs some decent cooling. On the back, we've got the interesting stuff. Over on the left here, we've got the headphone and the microphone jack, so you can hook up external analog devices. Here's that really weird power supply. It looks like an RCA stereo jack, but that's where the power supply for the laptop plugs in. Underneath this door is where all the interesting stuff is. We have an Ethernet port, hooray! So we're going to be able to plug this directly into our hardwire Ethernet. Other connectors along the back here that we could use. This is interesting. There's a reset button here with kind of a little graphic that just tells you how to reset the machine. Maybe I'll try that a little bit later on. Moving along the back, we've kind of got an interesting array of connectors. This is an ADB port, the Apple desktop bus. This was used for keyboards and mice and stuff like that. The next connector is a local talk port. This was Apple's proprietary network. Obviously an Ethernet port, pretty easy to figure that one out. This is a SCSI connector. It's called an HDI 30. The next connector is an S-Video port. This was kind of the interim high resolution port between RCA connectors and composite and HDMI. Lastly, of course, we have a VGA connector. Of course, the next step is we need to plug it in and power it on. I already know that this guy is not completely toast, so I'm not particularly concerned about it blowing up on me. But I do have the appropriate power cord here. There's a power brick on the floor we're connected up to. There's that awesome power connector. This is a very lightweight wire, and if I remember, it's a 24 volt power, something like that. It said so on the back. I flipped it over to take a look at the power ratings. It said 24 volts at 1.87 amps max, which is a pretty hefty load, but not too bad. The power supply should be able to handle it, but it does show why this thing runs so hot. Oh. Immediately the fan started running and I got a light. Let's see what we got here. Now, this guy actually has something of a loose lid, so this lid will kind of flop over if I'm not careful on it. But speakers are right here. Let's see if we'll get some life here. The happy sound. Happy Mac sound. These have a notoriously long startup time. Even this seems to be a bit long. Oh. I held down the button. The screen came live and I heard the disk start spinning. Okay. So we're at 3 minutes of 6 here. Happy Mac! Yay! Let's see what happens. A few moments later. The drive is rattling away. That's interesting. The screen blanked. I hit enter. I got the startup sound again. But now we have an Apple logo. I'm sure that means something important. What that means, I'm really not sure. We'll look that up. We're chugging along here. I think we noted, obviously it's got a physical hard drive on it. You can hear it rattling away. And with such little memory in it, since this is running OS 10 or OSX or however you'd like to phrase it. I'm going to let it be quiet for a minute. Now, this boot process ran for about another 2 minutes. What I found out later was this Mac has the old boot ROM in it, which means that it's got a socketed ROM chip on the motherboard that helps it boot in a certain sequence. When we saw the old Happy Mac logo, that was the original boot sequence starting up, and then it hands over the process to basically the new boot, which is now running OS X. So this is why we switched from the old Happy Mac to the OS X logo here. These machines could run either OS 9, the original not particularly fancy OS, or the Mach-based OS X. So it was interesting seeing how they could switch from one mode to another.
Oh. Backlighting is gone, but that says Mac OSX right there. There's brightness, fine. Looks like we have a desktop. Sort of. And we're up. Let's do a little exploration. Now, the boot up finished, but let's see what we can find here. About this Mac. So Mac OS X, version 10.2.8. A whopping 384 meg of memory. That's interesting. I think that matched what it said on the back. That's fine. And a 266 hertz PowerPC. That says copyright through 2003. So I suspect this machine has had an OS update a couple times, which makes total sense. Doing a little more exploring, we can actually take a look at the profiler here. And it tells us a little bit more about this machine. Running Mac OS X, OSX 10. I guess that's the correct way of phrasing it. 267, 67 megahertz, one CPU, 1 meg of cache. It's a G3. And here's our Ethernet address, which is great. Nothing in the PC card slots. Nothing on the Oh, it does have a USB bus. Oh, that's going to be helpful. Good. I just have to figure out how to do that. No FireWire. And that's what our disks are. Frameworks. All the different apps installed here in frameworks. Some of this stuff actually goes all the way up to 2008. So somebody's been doing a little bit of updating on that. That's kind of nice. And what else installed? Applications installed. Oh, look, Adobe Acrobat Reader. But that's going to need an update. Okay. So I'll tell you what I think we're going to do with this is let's see if we can't get this onto our network and get it talking to the world.
Now, next to my workbench that you all see my videos on is my standard workstation, but I have this custom rack I built that has all my networking gear here over on the side. In order to get a network drop connected over to the Powerbook, I need to run an Ethernet cable from the switch that's in the front of my little rack here across to the desk. It's pretty rare that I have to do hardware connections, so I didn't have the cable already wired in. So I just pulled one of the spare cables out of my box and strung it across the desk. Very elegant.
This guy. We know we have an Ethernet port in the back here. There, let's plug it in. Did hear the disk rattle, so it knows it connected. Let's see if we can get some network here. Internet. Set up a .Mac membership. I have so little interest in doing this. Email reader, web. Okay, I don't need any of this stuff. I don't care about disk space. I wonder if it just plain old connected. Let's give it a try. We do have an old version of Safari right here.
I'll spare you the details here, but it turns out that Safari just wouldn't start. I kept clicking on the icon, kept playing around with it, but the icon would bounce, but it wouldn't come up. And I never really got a sufficient answer. I was getting all sorts of crash jumps into the event log, but they weren't particularly helpful. Considering this version of Safari was a good 15, 20 years old, I really didn't have high expectations.
No signs of life. Yeah, there we go. Network overview. We're up. Went into 68, so we're on the network. But we have no browser. I mean, one could say that's actually good. All right, let me do a little bit more tinkering. Hey, a terminal program. There we go. All right. So can I do like ping Google? I can. Hurrah. All right. So that's good. We've got network.
And with the network up, I should be able to do a software update. Unsurprisingly, this didn't go particularly well. It just kind of sat there. While puttering around in the application folder, I did notice that we had Internet Explorer installed, but that pretty much went as well as expected. So if we really want to do any serious work on this machine, we're going to need to figure out how to get decent software onto it. Thanks for stopping by. If you like this content and would like to see more, click the like and subscribe buttons down below, or visit us at vintageapparatus.com. We also have a Patreon page.